Cool? So now, looking at the pancreas. All right, so the pancreas is going to be derived from your endoderm. The endoderm is going to be creating the main cells, and also we're going to have the septum transversum creating the connective tissue component of your pancreas. So what are we seeing here? So this looks like it's a trend here. Okay, so we have the endoderm creating like the major cell, and the septum transversum creating like the connective tissue for the liver, for the gallbladder, for the pancreas. You see it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now when we're looking at the pancreas, so the endoderm is going to create like the secretory cells. But how it begins is that we're going to have two buds. We're going to have the dorsal pancreatic bud, which is going to be towards the dorsal aspect, or towards the posterior abdominal wall. All right, and then we're going to have the ventral pancreatic bud, and we can see it here. This is your dorsal pancreatic bud right here. And this is your ventral pancreatic bud. Right? So what's going to happen? The ventral pancreatic bud is going to migrate over and meet the dorsal pancreatic bud, which is occurring here. So this is your dorsal pancreatic bud, this is your ventral pancreatic bud. The ventral pancreatic bud has now migrated and it has met with the dorsal pancreatic bud, and then they're going to fuse and combine. Now notice that each one of these pancreatic buds has their own little inlet into the duodenum, because this is the stomach and this is the duodenum. Right? So the dorsal pancreatic bud is actually bigger, right? And you can see it's clearly bigger, right? So you can kind of see that it's going to be forming the tail, the mid, the head, part of the head. Then I'm forgetting how the uncinate process goes. Okay, so you can see that this dorsal pancreatic bud is going to be forming the tail of the pancreas, the middle part, and part of the head. You can see that, right? Now this, let's see, this is so this is going to be this is going to be our minor duodenal. This is this is going to be like the, I think, minor pancreatic duct, but this is going to form like your minor duodenal papilla. And this guy, the ventral pancreatic bud, is going to form your major pancreatic duct. And it's, so basically this is the one that the common bile duct joins with. So they're your common bile duct. Let's see here. Here we go. So here we're going to have the right and left hepatic ducts. Then we have the common hepatic duct. Then we have the cystic duct. The cystic and the common hepatic duct form the common bile duct. All right. The common bile duct joins with the major pancreatic duct, which is located on which bud?
Dorsal.
Ventral. Notice, look, there's two ducts. There's one right here and there's one right here. Notice that your common bile duct is fusing with the duct of the ventral bud. All right, I think that's significant. This will become the minor duct and this will become the major duct. All right, so this is the ventral one is gonna form the uncinate process of your pancreas and the head. It's gonna help form the head. And I think that should be obvious, right? It should be obvious. I think it should be obvious. So again, that's what I'm saying here. So when you're looking at the ventral one, right, it's going to help to form the uncinate process, forms part of the head, right? And then we just said for the dorsal one, okay, so Let's see, did I have the dorsal one? Okay, yeah, so the dorsal one is going to form part of the head, the neck, and the tail. Okay, it doesn't have a mid part, it has a neck. It's a head, neck, and tail, not a head, middle. It has a head, neck, tail. Alright? Now, this is the thing, right? So something can go wrong with the ventral pancreatic bud going around to meet the dorsal pancreatic bud.
Okay.
Right? Something can go wrong. So what can go wrong? So what can happen is that that ventral pancreatic bud can divide into two parts. All right? So it can divide into two parts. One part can be going like forward, like one part can be going, let me see here. Okay, so let's just say we're looking at this guy here, right? We're looking at this guy here. This is our ventral pancreatic bud. So one part, let's just say this part, can be going this way, and then this part here can be going that way. So what they do is that because one is going one way and the other one is going the other way, what they're going to do is that they're going to actually close off the duodenum. Does this make sense?
Why are they closing off the duodenum?
Because they're going different directions.
Oh, the buds are.
The ventral bud.
Okay.
The ventral bud is gonna so one part of the ventral bud is gonna be going one direction, and the other part of the ventral, not the dorsal, other part of the ventral bud is gonna be going the other direction, and that's going to close off the duodenum. So this is called an annular pancreas. That's what that's called. Or duodenal stenosis. You get a duodenal stenosis. All right. So Dr. Baker was asking what happens if you have a child that has duodenal stenosis or annular pancreas. What happens? So the baby won't have any bowel movements because the food is not going to get to the bowels. Not going to get to the intestines, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what else can be expected? The baby's going to start throwing up the food because it has nowhere else to go. Yeah. So that's that for this.
Okay, I have to write all this stuff down now.
Yeah, no worries. If you want to write it down, I don't mind. Okay, so how did we form the liver? How are we forming the liver? How did we form the liver?
The liver is from, you get hepatocytes from endoderm, and everything else comes from septum transversum.
Okay, that's right. So what forms the hepatocytes?
Endoderm.
Okay, what forms the phagocytic cell?
Septum transversum.
What forms the connective tissue of the gallbladder?
Septum transversum.
What forms the epithelium of the gallbladder?
Endoderm.
What is the function of the gallbladder?
Store and concentrate bile.
Okay, and how does the pancreas form? And how does the pancreas form, and where is which bud forms the minor pancreatic duct?
Okay. So you have ventral and dorsal buds that come off the gut tube.
That's right.
And the ventral bud goes around and fuses with the dorsal one.
That's right.
And then there's two little shoot things that go off.
The ducts.
Sure. that go off of the buds. And the one that was on the ventral is the minor, and the one that's on the dorsal is major.
It's the opposite of what you said.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Yeah, so it was the opposite of that. So just remember, the major one is on the little one, and the minor one is on the big one. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
So what is merging with the major pancreatic duct?
The bile duct.
Okay. What forms the bile duct?
The right and left hepatic ducts merge with the cystic duct into
Okay, right and left.
bile.
Right and left hepatic duct fuses to form what?
Hepatic.
Yeah, common hepatic duct. Yeah.
Common hepatic, which goes with cystic
That's right.
to make common bile.
That's right. Common bile duct, which then fuses with
Major papilla.
major pancreatic duct,
Okay.
and then empties at the major duodenal papilla area. Cool. All right. So that's that. So okay, another thing that's kind of critical to know. So the pancreas starts out dorsal, then it's actually going to get pulled back slightly and it's going to rotate. All right. And this process, I'm going to show you a picture of this so that it becomes a little bit more memorable. So this is going to cause the pancreas to become secondarily retroperitoneal. So any organ that's secondarily retroperitoneal is an organ that was first intraperitoneal and then it became retroperitoneal. So primary retroperitoneal means that you were always retroperitoneal. Secondarily retroperitoneal means that you were first intraperitoneal, meaning that you were within the peritoneal cavity. And then you became retro. You were behind the peritoneal cavity. So you become secondarily retroperitoneal. So here we go. Right, where is this image? I thought I had this on here. It's kind of crazy how I'm not finding stuff. Okay, whatever. Oh, okay, here it is. Okay, so you see the pancreas, right? Well, actually, no, wait, this is actually not. Okay, so look at this, right? So here, so what would this be?
What would what be?
What would this be?
Gut tube.
That's right. So the pancreas is coming off of it. Remember, we had the dorsal, ventral. Ventral goes behind and meets the dorsal. So at one time, this pancreas was within the peritoneal cavity. So we say it was intraperitoneal, meaning it was within the this is the peritoneum, which was the intra-embryonic coelomic cavity. What we're saying is that this pancreas is starting out within that peritoneal cavity, so we're saying that it's intraperitoneal. And what's going to happen is that we're going to get a rotation. This is going to so first it's going to move back, and then there's going to be some like rotation occurring. All right. And what that's going to do is going to take the pancreas and it's going to move it behind. This is the peritoneal cavity. Now the pancreas is behind the peritoneal cavity, so it's retro. It's behind the peritoneal cavity, so it's retro, but it's secondarily retroperitoneal. So that's all that is saying. Okay, now we move into the stomach, right? So we already know that the stomach is being formed from the endodermal gut tube. All right. So what's going to happen is that we're going to get proliferation of that segment of the gut tube that is going to form the stomach. We're going to get proliferation. And so, like so. That was the gut tube, probably started like that. And then you get proliferation, you start getting this little bulge here. But what's going to happen is that the left side of that stomach is going to be growing faster than the right side. So because the left side is growing faster, so maybe over here, it's going to lead to this unevenness. All right. Cool. So the left inferior border is going to become the greater curvature. Spell that word right, but okay, it becomes a greater curvature. the greater curvature of the stomach is going to connect to the greater omentum. And in case you forgot what the greater omentum,
I remember. It goes over here, and the lesser was up here. It's not quite correct, but it makes sense in my head.
Okay, cool. What happens when the migration of the ventral pancreatic bud is wrong, like when it doesn't migrate well?
You get annular pancreas, which cuts off the duodenum.
Okay, so what will be the symptoms of this?
So there will be no bowel movements, and you'll throw up what you eat.
Okay, that's right. Okay, so what we're saying is that the left side of the stomach grows faster than the right side. That's why we get this little C shape.
Mm-hmm.
So as the stomach is growing, it gets this C shape, right? Also, the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve was originally traveling on the sides of this gut tube, like this. All right.
Yeah.
All right. So what happens is that this vagus nerve that was originally on the side here. So let's just say, let's see, this is the left vagus, and this is the right vagus nerve. So as the gut tube is growing faster towards the left side, and we're getting this kind of like movement or this rotation this way, the left vagus will actually be on top, like so, and the right vagus will actually be behind the stomach.
Okay.
All right, so that's what this part is saying here. Okay, then we talked about the lesser omentum. Remember when I showed you the lesser omentum? The lesser omentum. So that behind the lesser omentum, you're going to have the lesser sac.
Makes sense.
Let's see, do I have anything here to show you? Okay, so I don't have anything here. Okay, yeah, so behind the lesser omentum, you have the lesser sac. Now, if you have an ulceration at the back of your stomach, then those contents will enter into this lesser sac, like at the back of your stomach.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Now, remember what we said about the spleen. So it's the only organ that is not forming from what?
The gut tube.
That's right. So it's forming from the dorsal mesentery. All right. What is the dorsal mesentery? Actually, let me see. Is that a good question to ask? Actually, we didn't talk about this. Okay, we didn't talk about this. What forms the ventral mesentery?
Septum transversum.
What forms inside of the ventral mesentery?
The lesser omentum and.
Okay, yeah, that's the structures that it gives rise to. That's right. So the ventral mesentery is giving rise to. Go ahead.
Falciform ligament.
And the lesser omentum. What formed within the ventral mesentery? What forms within it? There's an organ that forms within the ventral mesentery. The liver. The liver has two sources, right? Mesoderm of the septum transversum, right? And the endodermal cells, right? Endodermal cells migrate where? Into the what? Ventral mesentery. Right? So when you're looking at the liver, this is what we had here. Look at it right here. When you're looking at the liver, this is your ventral mesentery. This guy, these endodermal cells are going to migrate into your ventral mesentery, and they're going to combine with the mesoderm of the septum transversum, and that's how you're going to form your liver. So which component is making the hepatocytes?
Endoderm.
Okay, that's right. So cool. So the spleen is being formed from the dorsal mesentery, not from the gut tube. It's not part of the GI tract. There are two ligaments that are going to be associated with the spleen, right? So you're going to have one attaching it directly to the posterior abdominal wall, and you're going to have one attaching it to the stomach. So the one attaching it to the posterior abdominal wall is called your linorenal or your splenorenal. So the reason why you have renal involved, the reason why renal is involved is because near the posterior abdominal wall is your kidneys. So it's called splenorenal. Like it's supposed to be like spleno, like posterior abdominal wall, but what's next to the posterior abdominal wall is your kidneys. So it's splenorenal for the ligament that's attaching the spleen to the posterior abdominal wall. And the one attaching the spleen to the stomach is called your gastrosplenic or gastrorenal. And let me show you a quick picture of this. So here we go. So look at this. First of all, this is the posterior abdominal wall. We're assuming this is the stomach. Well, yeah, we're assuming this is the stomach. Okay? So the stomach is suspended by what? Suspended from the posterior abdominal wall by what?
Dorsal mesentery.
That's right, dorsal mesentery. Now, so what's going to happen is that the spleen is going to develop within here, within the dorsal mesentery. And so that's why you get this here. And now as the spleen is developing within here, this dorsal mesentery, now there's going to be two segments to this dorsal mesentery. There's going to be one attaching the spleen to the what? The posterior abdominal wall. And there's going to be another one attaching the spleen to the stomach itself. Do you see that? So the one attaching the spleen to the stomach is your gastrosplenic. And let's just say you had your kidney here, right? Kidney. And the one attaching the spleen to your kidney is your splenorenal, because the kidneys are retroperitoneal. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So that's the point I wanted to make. So that's what you want to know about the spleen. So the spleen is developing from what?
Dorsal mesentery.
That's right. And what were the two ligaments associated with it?
Splenorenal and gastrosplenic.
You said what? Say that one more time.
Splenorenal and gastrosplenic.
Okay, gastrosplenic. Okay.